Hi everyone, my name is Karen, this is my channel RatherBeReading, and today I'm bringing to you my March mid-month wrap-up. So in the first half of March, from the 1st through the 15th of March, I managed to complete a total of 9 books, which I am pretty happy with, so let's jump in and talk about those books. The first book that I completed in the month of March was Our Own Private Universe by Robin Talley. This is a book that I was actually approved for on NetGalley, so thank you to NetGalley and the publishers for approving me to read this one. This is a young adult contemporary story about a girl who, as part of her church youth group, travels to Mexico with a bunch of other church youth groups from her area to build a church, I believe, in Mexico. And the story is just kind of focusing on her dealing with her kind of sexuality while she's on this trip. The story has a lot of really great diversity in it. The main character, Aki, is African American, and she is also bisexual. There is another character in the story who is questioning their sexuality. There is also a lesbian character, side character. So there is a lot of great diversity. The main thing that I really loved about the story was that Aki knows that she's bisexual, that she's attracted to both girls and boys, but she really struggles with what that means. It's really hard to explain, but the way that it's written in the book, that she's well, if I do this with girls, does this mean that I'm more lesbian than straight? Or am I really bisexual if I've done more sexual things with girls than with boys, etc., etc.? And I really did like that real questioning of things, because I think that's a lot of something that, I personally am heterosexual, so I don't exactly know, obviously, from my own personal experiences, but from what I understand, that is something that a lot of people really do struggle with bisexuality. So I really appreciated that. This story also has absolutely wonderful discussion of safe sex, and not heterosexual straight safe sex, but safe sex in a female situation. The main character does a lot of research and really looks into how to be safe, and I just thought that was an absolutely excellent representation to put into a young adult novel, that it is smart and a good thing to do to research and to be aware about how to be safe. I thought that was just really, really excellent. Now, I did have problems with the story. There is a lot of kind of petty teenage crap in this book. The main character, I think, is 15 or 16, and with that kind of age does come a lot of the characters are telling stupid lies, and there's just a lot of teenage drama and stuff, and that really did take me out of the story quite a bit. And like I say, the story had a lot of great things about it, but I just didn't love it. In the end, I gave this one 3 stars. The next book I completed, I listened to on audio, was Winter White by Jen Kalanita. This is the second book in the Bells trilogy. I read the first book in February. This was okay. I didn't feel as connected to this story as I did to the first one. I mentioned when I talked about the first one in my February wrap-up that the main character was a new girl in a new school, and that was something that I could personally really relate to. There's not really that aspect in this book, so I didn't connect to it as much. It's also really predictable. It's your really typical kind of YA, type story, but it's enjoyable enough. I gave it 3 stars. Next, I completed another book on audio, and that was Only Daughter by Anna Snoekstra. Now, this is a thriller novel about a girl who is caught shoplifting. I believe not a girl, she's in her late 20s, and she's caught shoplifting, and she's taken to the police station, and you don't exactly know why, but she doesn't want to reveal who she is. She doesn't want the police to find out who she is. So she remembers this story that she heard ages ago about a girl who looked very similar to her, who went missing. And so she says that she is this girl who went missing as a teenager. It's been 10 years or whatever since this girl went missing, and the story just all kind of kicks off from there. She goes back kind of into this girl's life, and it is a thriller, type story. I enjoyed this. I didn't realize, I just wanted to read this based purely off the premise. I didn't realize that this is actually by an Australian author. It is set in Australia. It is actually set in Canberra, which I actually really, really loved. I lived in Canberra for 6 years before I moved to Adelaide, and some of the settings in this book were just places that I really, really knew. I was actually just back in Canberra a couple of weekends ago for a friend's wedding, and in the book they were talking about, oh, blah, 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 Monica, and I was like, I literally just had lunch in Monica. And then they were talking about, she was talking about taking the younger brothers to like Big Splash, which is like a water park, and she's like, oh, in Macquarie. And I lived in Macquarie when I lived in Canberra. I literally lived like 2 streets from Big Splash. So that was actually like a real, like, I just really loved that, because that's something I don't get very often with books. We don't get a lot of books set in Australia, or if they are set in Australia, they're very rarely set in somewhere like Canberra or Adelaide. So I really did love that. Getting into the actual story, it was your enjoyable kind of thriller. It really was. I did think that parts of it were extremely unrealistic. Like the ways that she manages in some ways to like trick people into thinking that she's this girl, and that the police like don't pick up on some things. I was just like, I don't believe in real life that that would happen. So you do have to kind of suspend your beliefs a little bit. But it is really enjoyable. I didn't super love the ending. I will also say that there is a minor trigger warning in this for animal abuse. It's not like a big thing, but there is like a minor scene in it that may upset you if you're like, I personally do not like animal abuse, and it was a kind of confronting scene, but it's a very small part of the novel. This is just one of those stories that was kind of compulsively readable. I was listening to it, but I just wanted to keep listening to it to kind of find out what was happening. I really, really enjoyed it. In the end, I gave this 3.75 stars. The next book I finished was City of Heavenly Fire by Cassandra Clare. This is the 6th and final book in the Mortal Instruments series. I'm so excited to have finally completed this series. Now, I did really enjoy this. However, this is a beast of a book. This is 660 some pages, almost 700 pages, and it did take me a long time to read. I was quite busy around the time that I was reading this, and it did take me a while. It took me almost a week to get through it. And I think I would have enjoyed this more if I'd been able to read it really quickly and kind of just fly through it, because I don't feel like I was as connected to the story as I would have been if I'd been reading it really quickly. I did really enjoy it though. I did think parts of the ending were super, super like convenient, which is another problem. That's the same thing that I had with the Infernal Devices. What happened with a particular character, which I'm not going to name, I don't want to spoil anything, but at first I was upset because I love this character, and then kind of through events she kind of backtracks on what she did at the end. You'll know what I'm talking about probably if you've read this, and while I would have been upset if she'd stuck with what she did, I would have respected her for having the balls to kind of do it, but instead she kind of just she didn't have the balls to follow through with it, and she kind of still wanted to make things happy, and that really annoyed me. There's also a death in this book that I thought she cheapened by, again, it's like she didn't want you to feel all the emotions from it, so she would like kill off this character and then be like, oh, but, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, oh, it's really hard to talk about without spoiling you. If you want to talk to me about what exactly I'm talking about, like, you can, you know, direct message me on Twitter or message me down below, and I'll just like enter really far down before I like respond, because I don't want to spoil anyone. But I did enjoy this, but I did have some real problems with the way that Cassandra Clare kind of tried to make everything happy, but wanted to have like big things happen at the same time. I just felt like she was really kind of at war with herself in a way when she was writing it. I did really, really enjoy this. I gave it 4 stars. It was probably my second favorite in the whole series, after, is it City of Ashes? City of Glass, whichever the third one is. That's probably my favorite. I did really enjoy it, but I had some problems with it at the same time. The next book I want to talk about is Heartfire by K.A. Borman. This is the 3rd and final book in the Winterkill trilogy. Now, this is a series for me that is definitely a victim of time between series. It has been probably at least 2 years since I read the first book, and maybe like a year since I read the second book, and I feel like I would have enjoyed this trilogy overall more if I read them really close together. I gave the first book 4.5 stars, the second book 3.75 stars, and I've given this book 3 stars. So there's definitely like a downward trend, but I think that was just because I just wasn't connected to the story the way that I would have been, because I really was struggling to remember exactly what had happened in previous books, etc. I do also think that this book was very slow to get going, but we did have, over the course of the trilogy, absolutely amazing character development for the main character, M. I will also say that this is representation in this book of a character with a disability. M has, I want to say, a club foot. I'm pretty sure that's what it's described as being in the first book, if I recall correctly. It's not specifically mentioned in this third book what it is, but she does have a problem with her leg, that she like walks with a limp and things like that. I don't think that's own voices, but it is in there, which I appreciate. And it is the main character who has that. It's not a side character. There is also an LGBT side character, so there is some good diversity in there that the author has tried to put in, which I do appreciate. Like I say, I just really think this was a victim of not having kind of binge read the series, and as I said, I gave this one 3 stars. Next was another audiobook, and that was The Grass is Always Greener by Jen Kalanita. This is the third and final book in the Bells trilogy. This was okay. I feel like this is the type of series that as it goes on, I just got more and more kind of bored with it, because it is very kind of just run of the mill. I don't really know what else to say about it. It just kind of felt like the kind of book that when I finished it, I was like, okay, like I don't really know why I bothered reading that type of thing. It wasn't bad. It was just nothing special at all. I gave this one 2.5 stars. Next, we have another book that I was approved for in NetGalley, and that was Making Faces by Amy Harmon. So once again, thank you to NetGalley and the publishers for approving me to read this one. This is a new adult romance about a girl who is kind of the ugly duckling, and she has kind of always been in love with this boy named Ambrose, and Ambrose and 4 of his friends all go off. The book, it's like there's different timelines, but it's set just after 9/11, and Ambrose and his 4 friends all sign up to the army, and they go overseas together, and there is like a roadside bomb type situation, and Ambrose's 4 friends are all killed. And Ambrose is like severely disfigured, like in his face, etc. And he returns like to his hometown, and then there's kind of like a romance between him and the main character, Fern. I'd heard a lot about this, not a lot about it, but I had heard of it, and I'd seen the cover like around like a bit, and I'd marked it on as one to read on Goodreads ages ago. I really loved this. This hit me in like a lot of feelings. Like I cried for maybe like the last like 30 to 40% of this. I was just crying. There's a side character in this, Bailey, who I adored. I just absolutely loved Bailey. This is a, I believe this is categorized as being a Christian romance, so it does have some Christian themes in there, but I personally am not religious whatsoever, and I did not find the book preachy at all. Like, it's definitely, you can tell that there's some Christian themes in it, but it didn't bother me in any way. Because it is a Christian book, it is new adult, but there isn't a lot of like real like sexy times like in it or anything like that, which I actually really appreciated, because I find that sometimes with the new adult that I have read, it's like the author's just trying to like chuck in as many sex scenes as they can, because they're like, it's new adult, I can put sex in books, and sometimes it just gets a bit saturated with sex scenes. You don't really get that in this because it is Christian. So I actually really like kind of appreciated that. There's also one really great moment in this where a male character kisses a female character, and he kisses her, and he's saying like, he says something like, oh, the kiss was, you know, this and this and this, but it was not consensual. And I was just like, oh, wow, I'm so like glad that she put that in there, because it was one of those situations that happens a lot in these kind of like, not just new adult, but young adult as well, books where the character will just kind of kiss someone like completely out of nowhere, and he makes that comment that it was not consensual, that she was not expecting or wanting in that moment to be kissed by him, and he kissed her like anyway. And I just thought I really loved the author for like having the balls like to say that this, like, while some people in other books try to romanticize it as being this really romantic moment, that it's not a consensual moment between people. And I just really, really loved her for that. I really, really did love this book. I gave it 4.5 stars. I highly recommend. Definitely check it out if you haven't. Next, I completed The Farm by Tom Rob Smith. I actually buddy read this with Mel over at That Girl Bookworm, which is a really like fun experience. This is a thriller, psychological thriller about a man who is living in London and his parents have recently retired to Sweden. It's been about a year since they've been living there. One day he gets a call from his father and he says, your mother's really, really sick. She's having like psychotic episodes. We've had to have her committed. And he's like, oh no, this is really awful. He's making plans to immediately fly over Sweden to be with his parents when he gets a call from his mother saying, your father is lying. None of this is true. I'm coming to see you. His dad then calls again, is like, your mother's escaped from the like psychology ward, like don't listen to anything that she says. So you've then got this kind of warring opinions between the mother and father. The mother who thinks that, you know, is telling him this story about what she believes has happened, and the father saying that no, like that she's crazy, and the son trying to make this decision as to what he believes is truth, what is fiction, who's lying, who's telling the truth, that type of thing. This is a very quick, easy read. Like in the style of the story, there's no chapters really, but there are like breaks. Like every page, there's like at least one break basically. And then there's like, it kind of ends there, which looks like a chapter, but it's not really. There's just constant breaks and things. So I find with that style, you read very quickly because there's a break and you think, oh, I'll just read to the next break, and oh, just read to the next break. I'll just read to the next break. So it is very easy like to get through. Having said that, it's a quick read, but the story is very slow to unfold. At least halfway through, I was still like, I don't know what's happening. Like I was saying to Mel, I don't know what's happening. Like I still don't understand what this crime or whatever is that the mother thinks has like taken place. Like I don't know what her accusation is still. So it's kind of weird in that way. It's a very fast read, but a very slow story, if that makes any sense whatsoever. I did like the way that the mystery and everything unfolded towards the end, but then the very, very end was very, very abrupt, and I did not like that. So I had mixed feelings kind of about this. In the end, I gave it 3.5 stars. I did enjoy it, but I thought I was going to love this, and I didn't like totally love it, but I did enjoy it. As I say, 3.5 stars. And the last book that I read in the first half of March was Daughter by Jane Schmilt. I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I'm saying that surname correctly. This is another psychological thriller. This one follows a woman whose teenage daughter has gone missing, basically. That's basically the premise of the story. You have dual timelines. You are following the time around the time of Naomi, the daughter's disappearance, and then you're following about, I think it's about a year, like just over a year later, with the mother still trying to like come to terms like with this disappearance. So you're kind of flashing between the two like timelines. I didn't love this. At the end, I had so many unanswered questions, and like not even where you're just like specific things where you're like, oh, but how did this happen, or how did this happen? Overall, like character motivations are just not there. They're just not in this. Like at the end, they were like, you're like, okay, this is what happened. But why? Why did this happen? It just annoyed me so much. There was no explanation whatsoever of why events had taken place. I also felt like the author was trying to make it seem like everyone had all these secrets, and like I kept feeling like more and more revelations were going to happen, and then they just never happened. And I was like, okay, so they didn't have like a secret this whole time? Like what was happening? I also felt like the dual timeline in this didn't work. The present storyline, when you're following the main character in the present, like after the disappearance, it was pretty boring, to be honest with you. And any tension that was built up in the timeline around the time of her disappearance was just completely lost because of the boringness of the present. You just, you know, you'd swap back to the present and you'd just be like, oh, whatever, this is boring. And then you'd swap back and you'd be like, oh, okay, and try to kind of get into it. But then you'd swap back to the present again when it was boring. Overall, this book just really didn't work for me. I really actually struggled with this at the end, what to rate it. I I decided on 2.5 stars. Thinking about it, it might be a little generous, as maybe when I think like now on how like annoyed I was when I finished reading this might be more like a 2-star. I'm going to stick with 2.5 stars. That was like kind of my initial like rating, but yeah, not one I'd really necessarily recommend. So those are all of the books that I managed to complete in the first half of March. I apologize. I feel like I rambled like a lot about most of these books, so this video is really long. I apologize. I would love to chat with you guys in the comments down below if you've read any of these books, if you have any thoughts, or how your March reading month is going so far. I would love to chat with you guys. 9 books in the first half of the month I'm pretty happy with, because on average I read more books in the second half of the month than I do in the first half, so it's shaping up to be a pretty good reading month in March. As I said, I would love to chat with you guys in the comments down below if you have any thoughts. Please like this video if you liked it. Please subscribe if you want to see more from my channel. But that's all I've got for this video today. Bye guys!